spending more than 25 years in PHP, you can imagine what sort of things he has seen so far. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man with energy who could not come to last year, but this year he's on stage with us, JMac. Woohoo! Keep clapping for JMac. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right. As Vishal said, I'm Jason McCreary. You probably know me as JMac, the creator of Shift, and I've been trying to come here 3 different times. I started back in 2018, tried to coordinate with Frake. He's been here forever, and just couldn't make it work out. Last year, I had the plane ticket, had everything set up. 3 days before, I got COVID. I didn't get COVID the whole time during the pandemic. I got it 3 days before I was supposed to come. I was banned from travel. So I'm here now. And apparently, India tried to say, you can't talk even tomorrow anyway that you're here, but I'm doing it. So bear with me for a minute. I love talking about automation and code generation. So that's what I'm here to do today, to show you how to rapidly generate code in your Laravel applications with Blueprint. But we're going to take a little bit of a journey because Laravel gives you some things that you can generate code with yourself. Probably the most powerful command, of course, is PHP artisan make. And particularly the make model command with -a is going to give you all the things. And you can go that even farther with --test. It'll generate a test for your model as well. This is the absolute most generation you're going to get from Laravel out of the box. So we run this. We forgot our name, but thanks to the wonderful Jess Archer, we can plug this into prompts and say post. And there we go. Lots of stuff. My screen font size is huge. It's not in a pretty little row here, but if we kind of trim it back down, we see that it generated several different files here. And this looks pretty good on the surface. We got a model, we got a factory for our test, we got a migration, a seeder even. We have some form request objects, the post controller itself, and even a policy if we were doing authorization. So lots of stuff here, but it's a bit of a facade. If we go take a look at the migrations and take a look at that create post migration that was generated, we can see that it's kind of just a stub. We have some things here. We have the conventional ID. We have the conventional timestamps that all of our models have in Laravel, but there's not much else here. And as we kind of go down the line of all those different files, if we look, let's not change code. If we look at post, we'll see that it kind of has even less. It's just a stub, and it links out to that factory. And if we keep going down this line, we can go to the post controller and see that it's a resourceful controller. It generates these actions for us, but again, no real code inside here. So I think we can do a little better than that. And as the creator of Shift, like I mentioned, over the years, I get kind of a pulse on the Laravel community. I see what packages people are using and so forth. I get to consult on a lot of different Laravel applications. And over the years, one of them that I noticed was this Laracast generators. And despite the name saying 5, it's actually still compatible with Laravel 10, and there's a PR for Laravel 11. So it's still around, and it's still functional. I won't necessarily install this, but if we kind of watch the GIF here for a second, we see that it adds on to make migration some additional commands, in this case, schema. And we can take that schema and we can pass it some data from the command line. So in this case, we're saying, hey, I want to make a name that's a string, and I want to make a column for description that's text, and an age that's an integer, and so forth. We can actually pass it a little bit of data. And when we run this, it's going to generate a migration that fits and has those different fields. And again, if we keep watching this, we'll see that the code here actually generates some pieces inside of that migration. So when we run our migrations, of course, that table's generated. So we're giving it a little bit of data, and it's actually generating some code for us now. So this is all possible. This is out there. But it's taken a step back from that artisan make command for the model. We're not generating more than just the migration. So we kind of went through the effort and the tediousness of typing on the command line all these fields and colon delimited things, and it's just giving us a migration. I think it could do a lot more. So I went out and I built that. That's called Blueprint. And Blueprint is a code generation tool that I made a few years back, kind of just to scratch my own itch. And over the last 3 or 4 years, it's gotten almost 3,000 stars, a lot of contributions, and it's grown much, much larger than I ever really expected it to. And it's been a great little side project for me to work on. So let me give this a fair demo. So let's go back, and we're going to run Taylor's favorite command of nah to get rid of all that stuff. And let's make sure we've reseeded our database back to a default Laravel 11 application. All right, I've already installed everything because I didn't want to tempt the demo gods with my internet connection. So Blueprint's already installed, but if we just be good kids and go through this for a second, you basically install Blueprint, and you can also install this testing package, which I'll come back to in a second. And again, to give this a fair shake, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Let's just copy this down. I'm on a Mac, so let's just do pb paste, and I'm going to put this in what Blueprint calls a draft.yaml file. I'll just paste it out there. We're going to go through this YAML file in a minute. But to just keep it at a high level of running these commands and seeing what happens, let's go back, and we're going to copy this build command. Let's take off that draft part because we don't need it. And when we run this, very, very similar to artisan make model, we get a lot of different things that are generated for us. We get the post controller, we get the post factory, we get the migration, all the things we saw before, but a few additional things too, actually. We get, notice an event here, we got a job, we got a mail, there's even some blade templates that were generated. Even our routes web file was updated. That's kind of interesting. So let's go dig around and look at this code. If I go back to PHP Storm, and let's bring up the migration, same thing. Just like layer cast generators, we see that with a little bit of information, we're actually generating code in the fields inside of this migration. But unlike layer cast generator, if we go into the post model, we've now actually filled that out with the data that we provided. So same set of data, just a couple fields and what their data type is. And now we're taking that and generating even more code in your application. So we have fillable, we have cast, even the relationship that it inferred from the way that you set up your database. Taking this even farther, we can see in the post factory, again, getting filled out. It's going to intelligently figure out, OK, that's a title, so we probably want a sentence, a content, that's 3 paragraphs, all sorts of intelligence built into this that continues to generate the code, again, off just those few fields, the same fields you would have put into something like generator. Let's look at the controller. Controller, same thing, not just the resourceful actions, but actually what you said in that YAML file to do. Very, very custom things, too. So index is pretty straightforward. We just query for all the posts, and we send them to that blade template. Straightforward index operation. But for store, we can get custom if we want. We can say, hey, do that with a form request. Take that validated data and create one. Send a mail to the user, or the author of that post. That's called review post. Dispatch a sync media job for that post. Dispatch an event about new post, right? And then we can even flash something. All common things that you would do in Laravel, we can actually have Blueprint generate code that does that for us. But wait, there is, of course, more. So let's run artisan migrate. We're going to create that post model. And let's run vendor bin PHP unit. Not only does it generate code for you, it generates fully tested code. It generates the test for the code that it built. So it takes that post factory that we had, it uses that inside of a test suite to write HTTP tests for the controller we just looked at. And they're all in here. 5 different tests with 15 different assertions, not just the stuff that comes out of the box. Blueprint built that as well. So you get fully generated code following Laravel conventions that's tested. So let's look at the test. So if we kind of go back up to the top here, I'll just go through a few of these, but if you're familiar with testing, you can see that, again, this is a solid test. It's actually using that factory for index to generate 3 posts. It's hitting that route through an HTTP test. It's making sure it got an OK response. It's making sure the view is what you expected it to be. It's making sure the view has that post data. And we can go on through this and see, for example, store even goes so deep as to set up the fakes to actually make sure that the mail was sent, that job was dispatched, the event was fired. All built into here. It's sending in faker data. It's making sure it hit the database. You got redirected. And again, all those facades actually behave the way you expected. So all of this runs completely out of the box. So anything Blueprint generates for you from an HTTP perspective, it writes a test for it as well, a runnable test. Of course, you're welcome to go in here and tweak this. You can do things to make it stronger, tighten it up a bit. For example, we can say post to make sure not only did it receive a variable named post, but it actually got the post that we had faked out. And it all still passes additional assertions there. So pretty sweet, right? Let's go look at the YAML, right? What's up with YAML? Nobody likes YAML. All right, so if we go back to this draft YAML file, let's take a peek. Is that big enough? Can people see this? More or less? Kind of? I'm going to assume you can, sorry. All right, so we have two main sections in a draft.yaml file. We have models and controllers. And each of these have subsections within them. So let's kind of just start at the top with models. So the subsection is whatever model you want to generate, in this case, post. And within that, you name all of the different fields. So that's a simple key value pair, so title, and then whatever that data type is for that. So in this case, you can say string colon 400, just like that layer cache generator thing. But if you notice, some of the attributes and things that you pass in here, they should actually end up looking familiar if you're kind of peeking on here. And that's because I made sure that all of these line up with the exact same method names that you would use inside your migration anyway. So to learn Blueprint really shouldn't take too much time because all of the terminology is the same. If we go look at the Laravel documentation for migration, we can say any of these same fields. So again, string, tiny text, long text, whatever we want to say in here, and it's going to honor that. We can also pass in things like nullable, as we see here, or different attributes. Maybe we can say something like the default here is untitled, or something along those lines. So anything you can do in a migration, you just do it here. It's just simply YAML. I kind of like YAML because, and I chose it because it's one of those things that immediately it kind of has this built-in indentation. It's scannable, it's readable, it's human readable. And I think if you did something like JSON, you would have a lot of time writing all that extra crufty syntax, like published at and colon, and then maybe it's an array inside of here of all the attributes. So you can already see like how cumbersome this is. Although I get auto-completion, but yes, it's still pretty lame. So instead of writing all those extra characters and formatting that, whatever, it's all just built into YAML, and that's what I really like, and kind of why I chose that. So if for some reason you've written Java before and you hate YAML, and I'm sorry, but it is the best choice for something like this. So one last field on this model post that I want to bring up. And this kind of gets back to where Blueprint leverages as much of Laravel conventions as possible. And if you follow those, Blueprint's going to generate even more code for you writing less stuff. So notice here, or if we remember in our model, that we had a relationship for author. This all got built for you just based on this simple little line here that says author_ID is an ID, and then it points to the user model. We'll talk about some of that syntax a little bit more in a second because you can actually streamline that a bit more. This is technically not completely following the conventions because it's renaming that foreign key to author ID. And that's why we pass in this separate model. We'll see some trimmer things as we keep going here. But the point is I didn't have to do anything extra. Blueprint just kind of inferred that based on this suffix of ID, the fact that it was a foreign key, and went ahead and wired that relationship up for us. And it, not only in the model, but in also the factory or in our tests, it knows to generate things that are users. So again, leveraging those conventions to have the developer type less, but give you more. Let's move on down to controllers real quick. So same thing, top section controllers, under section is all your different controller types. Following along with that, you type less. You don't need to type the controller suffix. We know when you're in controller's context that that's a common Laravel convention to have controller behind post. So it generated not post, it generated post controller. We have the index action, so it's a little different than models. We have one more layer deep. So here we have the actions or methods within the controller. So we have index, query all. Again, it knows when it's querying all within the context of a post controller, that matches a post model of the same name. So it knows to do that eloquent query on post to get all the posts. Here, render. Again, similar terminology. You render a view. You render a blade template. All the same terminology built into Blueprint. Moving on down to store action, we have that validate, we have save, we have send for that review post email. We have dispatch of that sync media job with post. Again, terminology, familiarity with inside of Laravel. I tried to make sure that that came here so you don't necessarily have to go out and learn a whole lot. It should feel very familiar. There's good documentation on those controller statements. Again, the rest of the stuff comes directly from the docs. There's good documentation in Blueprint in general, but if you want to learn more about each one of those specific statements, they're all well listed here. There's about 15 different statements, and all of their options and examples are here in the docs. So you can learn them, again, pretty quickly. Okay, so we saw this in action. This, again, is kind of the example. Let's learn a little bit more, pushing the envelope. It's great that the example works out of the box, but how would you maybe use Blueprint? So we'll do a real simple thing here. Let's just do models, and we're all at a conference. So we'll just say conference. And let's kind of say, what kind of things would we want at a conference? Or what would a conference have necessarily? It probably has a name, right? And that's going to be a string. Maybe it has like a starts at, and that could be a date time. Or it could be a timestamp. It just kind of depends on your system. But again, all of these different things are supported. Maybe it's just simply a date. It's an all-day event, right? Whatever you want. The point is that you can control it here. You can say that that's nullable, anything you want, all from the documentation. What I want to talk about, though, is going back to those relationships, because I think that's a really powerful thing inside of Blueprint, to kind of generate that. Because when you're writing that code yourself, that can be where things really get cumbersome, to like wire all it up and build all the different tables. And again, Blueprint can kind of generate all that for you for all the various types of relationships inside of Eloquent. So a conference probably has a venue, right? So we can say venue ID and ID. And because we're following Laravel conventions, we don't need to do that kind of mapping that we were doing in the README example. That's just kind of for a demo. I think most of the time, again, if you're following the conventions, you can simply get away with writing this. But if you have more complex relationships, or maybe you like a little more structure, there is a section you can add to your model for relationships. And inside here, you pass this any of the relationship types that Laravel or Eloquent supports. So we can, inside of here, say belongs to. And we could just as simply have put venue here. Maybe it also belongs to like a region, right? There's Laracon EU, there's Laracon US, there's Laracon India, there's Laracon Australia. So there's maybe a region that you also belong to. And of course, a conference has many talk. Yeah, there we go, thank you. Or has many attendee, right? So all of the things that you would need for a particular model or conference, we just built here in, 8 lines of YAML. And it's pretty straightforward stuff. It feels familiar, hopefully. So let's go back and let's generate this and kind of take a look at that code, right? So we'll say PHP artisan blueprint build. And there we go. We just created the model section. So that's another kind of important thing about the draft. You can jump in there, treat the draft file very throwaway. Go in, generate whatever you want. You don't have to generate your entire application or every component or just brainchild the whole thing out in one night. You can, of course, but you can also just go in and make a quick model. You don't have to make everything for that model, and vice versa. You can just make a quick controller or a resource controller and just get a little bit more than artisan if you want. It's really that simple. In this case, again, we just did the model, so we really just get model-related stuff. We get the factory, we get the model itself, and we get the conferences table, or the migration for the conferences table. Which, let's start again and look at that first. So we see here, same thing. We have the string name, we have date time for starts at, we have this foreign ID. Again, it inferred that both venue ID and region ID are foreign. If we go look at the conference model itself, we'll see all the same stuff before that we expect. It puts everything in fillable by default. You can configure that. We'll look at that here in a minute. But it sets all the casts for the different integers, the date, time. We have the venue relationship set up as belongs to. We have regions set up. But notice here, too, the has manys, right? We have the has many talks, has many attendee. So everything got generated for us for just those few lines of YAML. Let's go back and look at one more thing. I keep kind of mentioning, hey, Blueprint does a lot for you. You type less, Blueprint does more. Notice that kind of just like make model, that inside of this migration, we get this ID and kind of timestamps column for free. And again, this is because it's conventionally part of every Laravel model. You can control this if you want. So let's see what that would look like. Let's say you want your ID to be a UUID. It's that simple. You can override this at any time. But the point here is that you didn't have to say ID. You didn't have to say created at date time. Same with the updated at. It just does all that for you. So if you didn't want an ID in your model for some reason, maybe you're tracking it in some kind of composite key, you can say false, and it'll turn it off. It won't generate the migration with that ID column. And the exact same thing for timestamps. You can say timestamps false. So you can get rid of those if you want, but again, leveraging the power of Laravel conventions, it just knows that you probably want those. You can, of course, change those if you need. And again, going back to venue ID, we actually left both of them in here. There's no need to do that. Both of them would work, so we can just say, nah, let's build that back again. Oops, I killed my YAML file. I nagged too much. Let's see if we can bring that back with some local history, save the day. External change, where is my draft YAML file? Got my blueprint file. No draft YAML? Come on. Well, whatever. Let's just bring it back ourselves. Touch, draft, YAML. All right, moving on anyway. We're done with the models action. Let's move on to controllers. So inside of controllers, we have a same kind of section. We don't have to do models and controllers. We can just focus on the controllers now. Now, going back, what I wanted to demonstrate a little bit with that relationship is, again, those shorthands. You get a lot more shorthands with generating controllers because, again, that's probably your most cumbersome action. The models and stuff, yeah, but you're writing the most code in your application of the controllers. So let's just say we also had that conference controller, and we wanted to just make a basic cruddy controller. Whoops. Instead of all that, we can say here simply, don't forget the semicolon, we can say resource. Now, technically speaking, this isn't valid YAML. One of the things Blueprint will do is actually pre-parse your draft file for these kind of shorthands, and it automatically expands them for you. So let's take just these 3 lines and see what Blueprint can do for you. So let's do PHP artisan blueprint build. And so just with that, we're seeing, again, similar things that we got from Artisan Make, similar things from the demo, conference controller, a test, the form requests for the different actions. It updated this routes file as well. It also generated some of the templates. We've been kind of dodging this routes web thing, so let's go take a peek at that for a second. Whoops. So let's get into web. So we'll see here that what it does, and again, this is kind of going above and beyond some of the other packages that we looked at, but it's actually registering that route for you, that resourceful route. And so what that means is just with those 3 lines, we're getting a fully developed resourceful controller. So all the 7 actions, index, create, store, show, all of those. And just to kind of prove that, we can use PHP artisan route list. And there we go. We see that they registered. They're in the web thing. We have create, index, store, show, update, destroy, edit. So all of those 7 are in there. And again, fully generated code. And now in this case, we didn't necessarily customize them the way we did in the demo, so it's going to put sensible defaults in for you based on what these actions typically do. So again, index is going to query all the conference models. It's going to send them a view. Create's going to show you a view. Store is going to make a new one. All of the things that you would expect. Delete, destroys. Gives you nice boilerplate code, not just those method stubs, but the full code. And again, this is tested. We could run the test for this if we wanted to. Now you're actually in control of this, so let's just kind of keep playing with this resource. Technically, the valid YAML for this is resource web. And again, Blueprint's going to expand that to actually say, index, query, all, redirect, or render view. It's going to put all of the stuff in there for you. But maybe you don't work with web controllers. Maybe you work more on API. Well, it supports that. You can simply say API, and now you're going to get the 5 resourceful actions for an API, and it's going to register that route inside of your API routes instead. You can also control this based on the different 7. So you can go so far as to say, oh, you know what? I only, maybe I have kind of like an old school singleton controller, and maybe I only want like create, store, and show. I don't want the other ones. So you can go so far as to say that. And again, it's still going to continue to generate that code. So if you want some cruddy, resourceful controller very fast, come in here, 3 lines of YAML, generate it, and then go in and write all of the custom stuff. So very, very powerful in that regard. Again, treat this draft file as just that, a scratch pad, a throwaway. Go in here, generate something quick, and then go write your real code. This is meant to help you kind of get started quickly, rapidly. OK. One last piece to kind of talk about here are, I guess, the different sections, the models and the controllers. We've kind of covered that. Let's go ahead and jump into configuring, because we've talked about how much this leverages all the different conventions. But I live in the real world, and maybe you have some things you want to leverage as well. So let's go out and let's do PHP artisan vendor publish. And again, we get the nice prompts here. We can say blueprint. So let's just excuse me, publish this blueprint configuration file. And oops, I keep doing that. And we'll go to blueprint now. And let's just scroll through this real quick. You can control all sorts of things inside of here. So you can control the namespace. You can control where your models or policies are located if they're different in your app. You can say where it actually gets generated. So maybe if you follow like a DDD or a modular pattern, you can change this to, source, or if that day you're working on a particular entity within your application, you can go so far as to say like that's underneath the conference domain or something along that. And Blueprint will just put all your code down in there. So you're able to control that, and it's pretty flexible in that regard. There's a bunch of other configuration options in here. They have the traditional Laravel cascade comment. You can go in here and check all these out if you want. The constraints, all the types of things here. Guarded versus fillable, singular routes. What I want to kind of focus on here and maybe end on a little bit are these different generators. This is what Blueprint uses underneath the covers. So it analyzes that YAML file, it expands it out into like this big array, and then it cycles them through all of these generators to generate all of the code that we're seeing. And these are registered here much like providers are registered in your Laravel application, meaning you can actually hook in and extend Blueprint however you want. You can override these, again, if you have a very, very specific application. This is where kind of the power comes in. We give you all kind of the basic ones here. The community has developed a few others. For example, I know that there's some for like generating Nova components off of a model, if you want to automatically do that. Filament also has one. The one that actually used to be a community one, but now is baked into the core, you might be seeing it commented out here. If you have pest tests, for example, I can simply come in here and swap the comment from PHP unit, and now my Blueprint, when it generates tests, will generate a pest test instead of a PHP unit test. So just to kind of demonstrate the power that you have inside of Blueprint. So again, Blueprint is kind of this concept when you want to generate things very, very rapidly. Again, it's not something that you would necessarily go in here and have this draft.yaml file be a representation of your entire application. Go in, generate the stuff quickly, go in and make your customizations. The time you saved using Blueprint can be applied to doing the thing that we need to do as a developer, which is write the code that can't really be done by the computer or the AI. So the final thing I want to say is sometimes there's a little bit of a question of people think that Blueprint maybe can only be used for brand new applications. And you can use it in any application. Again, the only requirement is that you're generating a model or a controller. But you can do it in your existing application. And there's a command that can help you kind of reference things. We've noticed here in the controller that we reference stuff. So there's this Blueprint artisan Blueprint trace. And this trace command goes in, and what it does is underneath the covers, it'll trace your models and create a representation that you would have created in YAML. And notice it traced one model. In this case, it traced the user model because it comes out of the box with Laravel. We don't have anything else in our application right now because we kind of nad it all away. But the point is, I didn't write this user model. We didn't generate it with Blueprint. It was already existing in our application. And using trace, I would now be able to freely reference this inside of a controller. So if we go back to that controllers section and we say something like conference, and we were to say maybe there's this announce method inside of it. Whoops, that's a semicolon. Not that. So we say send, session notification, and it's like to, user.email. Well, I never defined user email anywhere, but with trace, again, Blueprint now knows that in kind of its cache, its internal cache, and it's going to be able to pull that stuff out for you correctly. If you were validating on it or referencing it or passing it around, it'll figure all that out for you. So you can absolutely use Blueprint within an existing application. So with that, a very quick demo. I definitely need a drink of water. I hope that you will try it out next time you're generating a model or controller and it helps you kind of be a better and faster Laravel developer. So thank you.
You done? Oh, perfect. Now, I'm a little bit confused.
OK.
I had questions for you, but I have more than 25 questions.
OK.
So one thing is for sure that you need to spend a lot of time with attendees.
Yeah.
Because I cannot ask all the questions. But I picked two random questions. First question is from Abhishek. What happened to the desktop version of Workbench?
What happened with?
With the desktop version of Workbench.
The test version.
Desktop version, yeah.
Oh, desktop version of the Shift workbench. I killed it. I was so tired of working on Electron and all the other things. It's been replaced by the Shift CLI. Your license still works. It has all the same commands, but it's actually a little closer to home without Docker and Electron and all the slowness that that workbench desktop app used to have. So check out the Shift CLI. There's a page on Shift's website. So it does all the same stuff.
Yeah.
More even.
Yeah. And the same question, I mean, like the same guy asked another question. Can Blueprint generate classes for Filament PHP?
Can I see it?
Yeah.
Sorry. This can Blueprint generate Filament classes? Yeah, actually, Filament made a first-party generator. So if you check out the docs, there's an extending Blueprint section, and I have a link to their generators that you can install just like any other package, and that will use your same draft file to generate things in Filament. Nova has one too. There's a couple more out there, and of course, you're always welcome to build your own. So.
Yeah. And last question.
Last question.
How can we get a crack version of Laravel Shift?
What is it?
How can we get a crack version of Laravel Shift?
Oh, last year I released purchasing power parity, so I do see that some people are using it, but maybe we need more purchasing power. I don't know. What do you think?
Of course.
Lower it a little bit more. We'll see. So, all right, I'll be around if people want to ask me questions.
Thank you.